Hi there, everybody, and welcome to all the new folks I got from the Harmony Bundle that came over. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I was hoping I'd have a good something to say today, but to be totally honest, 2 hours ago I had absolutely no idea what I was going to say. Now, to be on the other side of this, I did have plans on a couple of days ago, and even as far as yesterday morning, I had an idea of what I was going to say and everything else like that. And then somewhere along the line, when I got up this morning and thought about it, it was like all of it just went poof. I've absolutely no idea whatsoever that I was thinking of is just recently as yesterday morning. And so I started thinking about what was I going to do? What was I going to say? Tried to figure out what it was, tried to pull back my memory. That didn't work because everything just totally went out the head. And then I somehow got on the idea of thinking about, well, gee, I had this goal set up that this is what I was going to do. And I realized I didn't make any notes to it. I just kept it in my head, which is a bad thing to do sometimes. Now, granted, sometimes I can remember, like for the next 15 minutes, I can remember, but how many of you have gone off, you've done something? I know all of us have done something like walk into the kitchen, turn around, look at everything, and say, why did I walk in here? Then you walk back to another room, look around, and you remember what you were supposed to do when you went back into the kitchen. What you're having to do is look at cues in that particular case, because when you go back into, let's just say you went into, the backyard or something, and you saw something, gave you a cue of what you need to do in the kitchen, says, oh, I got to go to the kitchen and do whatever. Once you got to the kitchen, the cue is no longer there. So you had no memory of what you were in the kitchen for in the first place. So cues become really important. This is why a lot of times I've said, and other people will say, to write down notes, or why you write down the grocery list. I mean, how many of you done the grocery list or any other shopping list and you left it on the kitchen table or something, and then you go to the store and end up forgetting half the stuff you put on the list? You're needing the cues. In this particular case, I didn't give myself any cues, so it just went out of the head. But I think down to goals is where I was coming from and started thinking about this. I think a lot of people set their goals up this way. They want to do whatever, they want to accomplish something, but they don't really, in a sense, put down their goals. They don't write it down. They don't indicate, sort of like, okay, in 3 months I'm going to, and they put it someplace where they can see. Or if they do write it down, that's basically all they do. In 3 months, I'm going to. Something along the line of, in 3 months, I'm going to lose 75 pounds, period. Done. Problem with this is, in a sense of what happened with me, is that once you get through going on with life and, other things intervene, you sort of like forget that goal until maybe you're sitting there someplace just, shoving a whole half gallon of Haagen-Dazs, cookies and cream in your face and say, oh, gee, I made this goal to lose 75 pounds. And then you say, well, maybe I'll just put it to another 3 months or some such thing, or maybe you just totally forget it all. But I think that when we're coming down to setting goals, it works out a lot easier if you set smaller goals for maybe like a week or a day, or if you're going to do a longer goal, write down, in a sense, a plan, at least a basic plan, an outline of sorts of how you intend to get there. Now, this is a little extreme, but go with the example. I think that a lot of us do things like somebody's just graduated from high school and says, oh, gee, I want to go get a PhD, except for the fact that the person hasn't even bothered to apply to college yet, let alone gotten there. And then they can't figure out why, when they're 30 or 35, why they haven't achieved their goals, because they're not thinking in terms of how they're going to accomplish those goals and do anything to create the steps to get there. Usually, I'll write down a note for what I want to say when I record it, but this time I didn't. So are we, many of us, me included, because that's what happened to me, so I have to say that, that's what's going on. We set out these goals, but don't really give any idea or thought to what we're going to do to accomplish them. Now, I said a little earlier about setting up goals on daily or weekly, and that's somewhat misleading from the standpoint. I don't mean you can't do long-term goals, but I think that if you do a long-term goal, you need to set up those short-term goals to get there. Again, using the analogy of losing 75 pounds, you can set up that goal and say, okay, I want to do that. But you also need to set up the smaller goals of how losing, say, like 50 pounds and 25 pounds or 10 pounds and 15, and start working on those smaller goals so that you can lead up to the bigger goal. Because if you just leave that bigger goal just hanging there, that gets to be hanging there, and then it becomes a drag on you, becomes stressful, and it gets to the point, like I said earlier, about you suddenly find yourself eating all the ice cream. that you realize that you're not going to be able to make it because you didn't set up those small goals in the middle. So if you're going to do, again, using, say, losing some weight, try and say, like, okay, for this week, what I'm going to do is eat one less cookie, have only ice cream every other day instead of every day. Do something relatively small so that you can gauge your progress and recognize whether or not you're doing anything, so that when you get to see those successes, you can make a slightly larger goal and work on that. So that's what I mean in a sense by having smaller daily or weekly goals, especially if you write it down or post something or tell somebody else about it so that they call and say, hey, how's your weight loss going? So that you have these constant, well, maybe not constant, intermittent, frequently intermittent reminders of what you want to accomplish. Now, I'm not saying somebody's got to call up every day and say, now, for some of you that might work. For some of you, that might be a really cool idea. Some of you like the idea of having an accountability partner call you up and say, how did it go today? Some of you, that would be absolutely abhorrent. You wouldn't want to do that. So you find what's going to work for you and to how you're going to accomplish those small, steady goals, and you'll get there a lot faster than you would if you didn't. And you're going to say, but how does you do it faster? If you're like, okay, again, I hate to do on weight, but that seems to be something that everybody understands. So if you set up and decide you're going to do 75 pounds and just leave it like that, I think most of you will have a vague idea of how that's going to be difficult to do because it's so vague and it's out there in the future. And then it's kind of like you're going to say, I'm going to, by the end of the year, I'm going to, and then it comes like, okay, well, maybe by the end of the middle of next year or something that long. But if you said, I'm going to lose 75 pounds, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to lose 5 pounds this month and then 5 pounds next month. So you're setting up those smaller goals that you can see the success in achieving those smaller goals. And it's going to be easier for you to get to the 75 pounds because you can see it. So that you've got, say, 5 pounds every month. And that's going to be what? 15? Yeah, 15. 15. 5 pounds every month. And that's going to take you 15 months. Okay, that's going to seem like a long time. But if you just put it off in 75 pounds, and you don't have those smaller goals, you may be putting it off so that it ends up being something like 2 or 3 years later and you still haven't done it. Does that make sense? I'm sure some of you have seen those goals or recognized or stopped to think about goals that you set 2 or 3 years ago that you still haven't accomplished because you didn't set any interim or smaller goals for you to work on your way to get to that bigger goal. You just said, I'm going to do this. And without looking at any smaller steps in the middle. So in this particular case, going back to the fact that I totally forgot what I was going to do today, I didn't write it down. I didn't have some kind of note for me. I didn't have, in a sense, a smaller goal to at least say, look at my notes and reviewed them yesterday. I just sort of like really took it for granted that I was going to remember it, even though I know that that's not always going to be a really good thing to do because there were other things going on and it was somewhat of a busy week. So the idea that I was going to remember it was going to be chancy at best. Now, I trust my memory a lot, but I also recognize the fact that it's not always infallible. This was one of those times that it wasn't. So I hope that my goof, I won't say mistake, my problem, my lack of forethought is going to be helpful to you. And you're going to think about that and think about how you're going to set up your goals. And can you take those goals and break them down? Another thought, because of the time, it just dawned on me. Think in terms of Thanksgiving. You don't get up on Thursday morning and say, I think I'm going to have Thanksgiving dinner for 12 people today. You've got to set it up in small goals, don't you? Would you actually, I'm sure there are people that get up and think, okay, I'm going to do it. Like, they get up on Tuesday and decide, okay, I think I'm going to do it on Thursday and all they can find is a frozen turkey. And that's going to be a small problem if they have to get it defrosted and all of that sort of stuff. So you have to do it in small steps so you can have it all work out. Because if somebody's thinking about doing Thanksgiving and they've forgotten totally about the fact that the turkey is probably frozen and they have to defrost it first, it's probably not going to happen. So hopefully you understand where I'm coming from. And hopefully all of you who are thinking about Thanksgiving have already figured out where your turkey's coming from and how you're going to defrost it. Send me some turkey. Okay. And have a good day. And I probably won't post next week, come to think of it, on Thursday for Thanksgiving. So, because everybody should be doing something, regardless of whether or not you've got family, but at least you should be doing something that you're grateful for. So, We'll see you later on. And again, if you've got any comments that you want to send me, please send them and let me know what you think about it, or if this was helpful, or how many of you have forgotten like me, so that I'm not the only one out there. And just stay in contact with me, or send this on to somebody if you think it would help them. I appreciate it. And this ended up being a lot longer than I expected it to. So take care and have a good weekend. We'll see you later. Bye.